at 11.
Oh my God.
And you're like,
Okay. This is the Senate Transportation Committee. We're resuming our discussions. I am, because we are on a crunch and we have to have our bill out by next Friday. And our staff is working as hard as they can. I thought what we would do at this point is run through the issues that we have out there and have some discussion around that. So Damien, if you could talk through the things you've heard around the table and the things that you have on the list.
Hey, great. For the record, I'm Damon Leonard from the Office of Legislative Counsel. I'd love to know who took the witness chair.
I know, where you
But that's okay.
If you got a hard chair.
I had to grab one of the folding chairs. That's okay. It's good for me. If this is the biggest hardship I have in my life, then I'm doing really well.
Did your daughter enjoy yesterday?
She did. She did. We all loved the video. So I forwarded that out to my wife from the moment they walked in. And then our head of visitor services now is my younger daughter's former kindergarten teacher too. So she loved the video because she got to see her kindergarten teacher. She can't wait for her visit.
I like the complaints about potholes.
Yes. All politics is local.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of entertaining. Also entertaining too that multiple kids in that group, their parents work for AOT. So this was really the perfect committee for them to come to. So that I like to joke that my older daughter's friends all work for the state. So they all work for AOT or BGS, the cool department that they went to. So anyway, so
future constituents for you.
All the parents.
Yeah. So anyway, things that we have got outstanding. There is the question of what, if anything, to add from S4, the legal trails bill. Tucker and I are deep into the research. We are working to try to identify potential pitfalls with the language that may require more testimony and things that might be ready with less testimony to go in the T-bill. Just understanding that we have a deadline to get the T-bill out, but then that there may be more time after that to continue working on those issues. So
really two issues here.
Right.
One is about the maintenance, and then
the other is about allowing the town discretion to determine the uses that are permitted on the trail. And they're really two separate issues. So just to give you the high level view, traditionally at common law, it's understood that when you obtain an easement or you have a right of way, you have the right to maintain. So actually, let me back up. I fumbled a question about easements and rights of way from you the last time we spoke. The best way to put it is all easements are a form of right of way, but not all rights of way are an easement. So there are two basic rights of way. One is you own the land under the right of way. So this is our state highways, railroad. You have the right to use that right of way. You have the right to grant rights within it. So on state highways or railroads, we can allow for power lines or other utilities to run along that right of way. The other is an easement where you don't own the land underneath it, but you have obtained the right to use that land for some purpose. So within the maintenance, you're allowed to maintain, if you have just the easement, you can maintain the easement for the use that you've obtained it for. If you own the right of way in what we call fee simple, which means you own everything, then you can maintain it and you can change the uses, etc. So the first question of maintenance is an easier legal question to address. although it is at issue in the case that was mentioned the other day, that's an easier and more clear legal question. So from what we understand here,
Because it is owned as a fee simple.
what, no, because you can always maintain for the existing use. So it would, an easement to, for example, drive your car across a portion of a property wouldn't be very valuable if the instant a tree fell across the easement, you couldn't cut the tree to maintain the access.
It isn't what the use was before.
So that's where the use issue becomes a question. So if the town owns the land underneath the trail, so they own the easement in fee simple,
Yeah.
then they can change the use easily. And as long as that use doesn't result in a burden on the surrounding land, then it's fairly straightforward. If the town only obtained the right for a certain kind of travel across that land, then you run into a problem where changing the uses creates other legal issues, such as, does that increase the burden on the underlying land? And does the town therefore owe compensation to the landowner? There are other things, like if your maintenance requires an impact on surrounding property, but the really high level issues are that generally you can do maintenance. There are questions if you start to impact the surrounding land. But the uses, if you don't own it in fee simple, changing the uses can have significant legal implications. Tucker and I are still digging into the legal history and into the Vermont case law on this, because there's so much else going on. We're just not getting through it as quickly as we can. So to be brief, since I don't have very much time before you have to go to the floor, it's more likely that the question of maintenance can be teed up right away for the T-bill if you're working to get it out next week. But we may need to take more testimony on the uses
So
issue.
I would just say that, but my recommendation is going to be, we put a toehold into the T-bill around the issue of maintenance, and then the week after we get the T-bill done, we take up the whole of S4 and we struggle with the more complicated parts in that. So if, for example, the Senate passed the S4, whoever's on the conference committee on the T-bill will have a toehold in there, and we'll have a process where we could include it if the House was willing to do that at that point. Otherwise, we'll have a bill that will be moving along in the process. So, but that way we will be able to do our due diligence on the issue that we've got.
Okay.
And I would just say that I appreciate the guarantee that we would consider the other sections with more time. I would be interested in introducing my own amendment to the T-bill on the floor to include the entirety of S4. I think that there is support for it in the Senate. And I think that the legal issues that you've raised, while I appreciate them, I think are not as extreme, perhaps, as maybe were articulated by the witness who's in the court case. So I personally feel comfortable, and I think the risk is more on losing those trails than the risk of requiring compensation. I think that that's, but I personally, if we choose, I appreciate the guarantee. And I think if it starts to become clear to me that that guarantee is being made whole, that we really will debate out those topics, then I wouldn't introduce a floor amendment. But if that's not the case, I feel that this is extremely important as a whole bill in its entirety for my constituency. So I would be introducing it as a floor amendment separately. And maybe it doesn't get attached, maybe it does, but I do think it got support.
And do I think I know the answer to this question. There's no idea when the Supreme Court will make a decision.
None that I have. I mean, I'm sure they know
It
internally.
could be
but-
tomorrow, it could be next year.
Right. It usually takes, I'd have to look back at when the arguments were, but it usually takes several months to get a decision. in the cases that I tried there before coming to this job, it really depended on the case. I had some cases where the decision languished for months and months, and others where we got a decision much earlier than we anticipated.
And it could be that it sort of settles it, or they could remand it back or something where we're just.
Exactly. They may settle one issue and say, go back to the trial court for additional proceedings on this other issue.
I
Yeah.
hate that. I
yeah.
wanted to just lay out, but, my hope was on this. We have a fairly long list,
Sure.
so I
Right.
want to run through that, but,
So the next piece, and these are in no particular order, it's just been as I've been taking notes with the discussion. So the next is the MBUF, mileage-based user fee. So there's a number of pieces in there. One is language to provide for updates on the federal grant. There was a question about considering language. Senator Harrison had asked that we look at language to permit AOT to seek private grant funding or seek and accept private grant funding for the program, not to require them to, but to permit them to, should that be available. And then I believe the chair had discussed looking at a start date of January 1, 2027 to allow more lead time, so that if we're considering rate setting next year during the session, you're not looking at, we adjourn, May 15th, and then there's 30 to 45 days from whenever the T-bill is signed into law for the rates to be imposed. So that would lead to more lead time. The other piece that I have, added clarity that the fees will be determined following legislative review and consideration. So just clarifying language there. And then updating the intent language to reflect that is the intent that it would be the average fuel tax revenue collected by the state for a non-plug-in electric vehicle pleasure car. And that this is intended to be an interim step in the implementation of the mileage-based user fee and gradually expanding that to more types of vehicles.
Well said.
So, yeah. So that's the mileage-based user fee piece. The next piece is just an update in the rail trails penalty piece, just to refer back to the penalty that's already in existing law, to provide that would be the penalty for a violation. And this will provide clarity that there aren't two penalties, two identical penalties for a violation. The next are the 3 studies that Jeremy Reed discussed with you. I believe it was yesterday.
Yep.
Yeah, right before the kids came in to talk about potholes. And those are looking at, one thing I do need clarity from the committee on is, so the House proposed the inflationary increases. Are you replacing that with the 3 studies, or are you doing the studies in addition?
well, I think,
More discussion needed?
what, I think the committee needs to discuss that. And, personally, I don't have any problem with the inflationary increase in the meantime, but I really would, over time, over the next this year and next, want to get to a place where this is more needs driven, and maybe focus our support to municipalities, particularly the issue of critical roads. And I use Town Hill Road here in Montpelier is, it really is the bypass that, and if something happened on the state highway system, that's where you would divert traffic. And I think we can focus that, our aid better. I also think it's more important for us to say what is going on in the municipalities and begin to have the discussion about what their true needs are, not just some inflationary increase. Because that's what we've historically done. That's what I think.
Yeah.
We talked about.
I support it. It seemed like what he suggested, I was in favor.
Yeah, I think it doesn't go far enough. I'd like to do more this year, obviously, but.
I'm for doing more as soon as we can.
Within the study language, has there been identified stakeholders that AOT would have to work with?
In the,
So I listened to what Jeremy
oh,
proposed.
within Jeremy's study language, I think the League of Cities and Towns is likely the major stakeholder.
Okay, great.
And I think they were mentioned.
And I haven't worked through the language yet. So, yeah, I apologize. This week I've been,
You didn't get done from yesterday, we're to today?
I know, this week, I've been juggling a lot and feeling like I'm, treading water desperately, trying to keep up, and I'm looking forward to a weekend to actually get a few things on the page for you here.
Well, can I, since you haven't started
yeah.
drafting yet, that we include the Vermont League of Cities and Towns and ideally our regional
I
planning
think-
commission partners?
Yeah,
Oh, I think
They were in the language that he gave
Yeah.
us.
Oh, I haven't
We'll-
seen that.
We'll make sure that that's in there.
Oh, I-
it should be posted from yesterday. I
Oh,
believe in my notes, I already have a note that work with VLCT and regional planning was mentioned in the testimony. But I'm just making a note here. Just to confirm that, and then
yes. Mhm.
I'll review the language he sent too, just to make sure that that is consistent.
Yeah.
With what was proposed, and if not, I'll flag it for you for discussion next week. I know that there was also discussion around I think it was the second study proposal about just refining some of the language to focus on getting better information on municipal roads and transportation facilities to ensure that the funding is going out based on need and focused on particular types of needs. So for like high use roadways or critical transportation facilities where an upgrade is critical to the network, the transportation network there, whether that's, whatever it might be.
We need to,
We need to move on.
we've got 10 minutes.
So the next piece that I had is in the Green Mountain Transit, just cleaning up that language to allow flexibility on funding. So basically deleting the funding source and just saying as approved by AOT, which would allow for transitions in funding over time without having to change the charter. The next piece, for section 13, it is a deleted section. So the only note I have in here is I have a formatting correction to make. That may be where I end up dropping the legal trails language. Section, the S75 items. So these were the Kurtzville items. I have a note that we are looking at, for the right to charge. I have a note to follow up with the committee on what might already exist for common interest communities, in terms of their law. I just got language while we were talking here from AOT, on proposed, edits to sections 12 to 15, which are the vehicle miles traveled. And I will work that language out, and then I have a note to circulate that to Senator White and AOT after I've put the language into our format to make sure everything works out and everyone's on board. And then that we are still looking at the complete streets language from sections 19 and 20. Then I have, let's see, the the study language on VIN numbers for from the split ray testimony. I got language on that I will be turning into language for us to make that work. I have a note to add rescission language to complement the existing statutory provisions that provide flexibility and ability to change things if we lose federal appropriations, or if there's insufficient money for projects, et cetera.
I think that we're gonna get dates we've got
Right.
dates from the agency coming. We want the JTOC committee to beef up the process that they, whatever plan they put together, they need to come in front of, the JTOC committee and present that.
Right. So, what I will draft is I'll start drafting a framework for some language. And then as I get more input from AOT, I'll fill in the language. So when we meet on Tuesday, you may just have some placeholder language there.
Yeah.
And then the medical transport, recruiters, I have a note that, we want to work on that. And I think we're waiting for a proposal from AOT. And that we're looking at ways to coordinate between AOT and VPTA, in particular, as well as potentially with the medical service providers. But I think the main thing right off the bat is the recruiters is our initial focus, knowing that the contract is going out or that they're in the RFP process for the renewal of contract with the Public Transit Association.
And I'm hoping that this committee, I alerted the chair of appropriations that we might want to use a little bit of general fund surplus is on
Surplus.
the one-time money. And use a little bit of that to kick this off and get this started. I totally see what we did today is moving into start this year, but moving into next year also, and concentrating on this area a little. But that $1 million, I think what we've heard is the grant from the AOT has asked for vehicles mileage travel is probably going to make it. And so we would, that $1 million that the House is in, a portion of that, we might ask appropriations to consider funding for some effort to start based upon what we heard today.
Right. I think you mean the $1 million for MBUF.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I would just ask that, I know that we just heard that, very compelling. There are other things that we've talked about in this room that are very worthy of funding that we could use that $1 million for, things like mileage smart. I just want to put that out there. It sounds like if I'm understanding you correctly, you kind of made a decision to direct the committee to use that for hiring the volunteer drivers. But I would ask that we really carefully consider that program right now over things like mileage smart are a benefit. So I hope that we really get that. So I'm wondering how you want.
Can we also put something in there to have the DMV look at the checkoff? Like not a full report. But
No, we're gonna definitely have that as part of the proposal to talk about.
Is that because you asked the agency to come back with a proposal? Is that?
No, we're gonna get it drafted and they can comment on it.
Wait, hold on. So now I'm confused. Just for clarity, I thought in our last meeting, you had directed the agency to take what we heard to make a proposal and bring it back to us next week. And what I just heard you say is, no, Damien will be drafting the proposal and then the agency will be commenting.
I think they can, they're gonna have a proposal. I think clearly, that a number of the things will be on the table here. I'm not exactly sure what, the other members of the committee will wanna go in the full direction. We're gonna move in some direction here.
But my understanding is I'm waiting for their proposal. And then I have a placeholder going in, waiting for their proposal. Based on your discussion, I will take their proposal and turn it into what goes into the bill. It's kind of like our normal process
Okay,
where
okay,
they bring in proposed language for something, and then based on the discussion with all of you, I take what you like, I make modifications, etc.
okay.
as needed.
And I would just say that I think we can anticipate in a proposal from AOT, there will not be a revenue source. Just going out all in there. And I personally am in favor of us considering what we did get from the proposal from BPTA, which included multiple identified revenue sources. So if we disagree, if we already know, should I be communicating with Damien to ask to have that section included?
Well, you can have it drafted and we'll put it in front of the committee.
Okay, I think now I'm totally like, I don't know what you want to do to have it considered, because I don't want to ask Damien to draft two things. And it sounds like, because I would ask that we draft, as I said in committee, the entirety of the proposal that was brought to us. I would go with.
I would say to you, we don't have time to go through the whole of their proposal before next Friday.
Okay.
I don't see how we would do that.
Okay, then I'm not understanding what the agency would bring to us that we would be able to discuss.
I think there are pieces, and I think they set out in priority some. You may hear the priorities differently than the agency heard it for those pieces.
Okay, so
Can
I
we,
just ask
can we
you-
go through the rest of the list that we've
Oh, I
got
thought
here?
that was it.
Because we've got
Yeah,
3 minutes.
Yeah.
Is that?
that's what I have.
Okay.
Is there other? So I had
We
notes on,
have a $700,000 hole, and we have decisions that, and how we will move. We have asked the agency to, come with a proposal on how they would move money around to do that. We may have different ideas from what they do, but we're gonna have to balance.
no, you're right, I actually skipped that on the list.
And
Apologize for that.
Yeah.
That was-
we have VIN numbers for the split rate.
Right,
Or any other carbon.
yeah,
Or
I
any
mean,
other
it's just
carbon.
as proposed by the split rate folks. Be exciting, hotbed for resto mods and.
And you
I like
said
it.
you wanted to, you had Rotors Rust,
Yeah, we got that letter that said they're already sending it out, so that's checked out.
so we're okay with that.
Yeah.
The TIB aviation fuels,
That's not for this bill, that's just
Okay.
to talk about.
And then, yeah, you also had the local option fees on resort tickets, and that's also a future
Yeah.
discussion.
If we have time to.
Okay.
Go on.
Oh, you
I'm
got
not in CEO.
Oh, nice.
okay. Yes,
So can I ask about the proposal that we heard then?
sure.
Okay, so we heard from BPTA that they have 4 things that they wanted to propose for the legislature. The first was expanding the pool of volunteer drivers. I'm assuming we'll hear about that in a proposal from AOT. They also asked to investigate mobile dialysis units. I would like to see that in the proposal. They also asked to investigate mobile SUD treatments. And then they also asked to establish a public transportation mobility special fund. Those are the 4 things that I understand is their main thing that they would like to see. I guess my question would be, if the agency isn't going to propose those things, I would ask to have it drafted. So that's kind of where I'm at in this, just so folks know.
I think that mobile dialysis, given that how much work we have asked our life council to do, that has to go through health and welfare, and the amount of money that it would take is gonna, in workforce seems like there's so much more that's than a transportation issue. That I just worried about putting it on the agency for this.
Yeah, I'm totally open to that. The reason I feel that I support their proposal of it is because they're gonna see increased costs as we continue to not do it. So my understanding is their proposal is for us to investigate it, which I don't know what that means, but I guess would we be open to them? I don't know.
Who would do, yeah, it seems like.
But that's the question, is I don't know.
Did
Yeah,
you want
I
to?
guess my only comment, for the record, Michelle Bloomhauer, Agency of Transportation, is that those two investigations are things that are totally outside of our realm of expertise. So we would not be qualified to take on any study or proposal to do that. Nor would the providers, just to be clear. And that related to the special fund, understanding both where we are with state finances and understanding the position of the governor's office, we won't be requesting a special fund for transit. I think we understand the lay of the land of transit funding needs pretty well from the numerous studies we've done. So we're going to be focusing our efforts on the mobility service, people, the volunteer riders and all that.
Okay, so if I understood correctly, the first ask that we had, which was to expand the pool of volunteer drivers, including investigating funding additional volunteer coordinators, having the checkbox on the DMV form, and having a statewide community driver program, that all things that we would see in a proposal potentially.
It may not be that specific in terms of how it's characterized, and I don't really know about the DMV box checking and whether that's a feasible thing that can be done by DMV or not.
Okay, so then I guess I would ask that what I would like to see at those three things at the very least. And I understand what you're saying. Maybe we ask our partners in health and welfare what they consider with investigating local dialysis units or the SUD units as well for treatments as well. And then for the establishing a public transit mobility special fund, I'm all in like on that idea. So I would really want to see some language, but if we don't think that that's movable this year, I'm accepting of that. It sounds like we're not going to be seeing that in the proposal. So I want to make sure if ever discussion.
I don't want to create a special fund if we don't have the money to put in.
Hey, 250K, I asked mine. We got $1 million.
And I would say to you, I think in all of this will not be the last time that we are going to take the issue up.
So how
The
much?
whole issue of what happens at the federal level with Medicaid, we don't know, but I think as services are constrained within the healthcare world, which they're moving in that direction, there's going to be more pressure for us to do, and that pressure will create the will within the body to do that. I think we have to go